Today's on-campus segment is presented by East Texas Baptist University, located in Marshall, Texas. ETBU offers a university experience built on academic excellence, nationally known athletics, and a strong foundation of faith and community. It's a place where students are challenged every day to grow, lead, and serve. Learn more about life on the Hill in Marshall at etbu.edu. Okay, Matt, the tournament brackets, both the men and the women, were released. We're going to hold off on kind of giving our thought on the women's bracket until tomorrow's show. We just couldn't get it all in today because I do want to focus on the men's side here. There were some, and you kind of mentioned before we started recording, this was one of those years where it really wasn't that difficult to pick who the 68 were. They were pretty well defined for the most part. I know you got some regional arguments from some folks who are upset, but for the most part, overall, this thing kind of went down the way we all thought it would, right?
Yeah, the 68, like if you look at who the first four out were, Oklahoma, Auburn, San Diego State, and I think Indiana. If you look at the metrics of it all, you were really reaching if you thought one of those teams was going to be in over one of the others. I think probably the most likely team to maybe not make it that made it was SMU. They were last on mine. You could maybe make a case for someone like Oklahoma, or Auburn or San Diego State to maybe make it over SMU, but it didn't seem very likely. And so I felt like the 68 were pretty obvious, and it turned out to be that way.
You did have a couple of potential upsets as the conference tournaments played out, but the thing that I took most from when the bracket was released yesterday was the fact that the regular season does indeed matter.
Yeah.
And, you really, unless you are just on the extreme bubble, it's very difficult to play yourself out of what you did in the regular season in a conference tournament. The top seeds turned out the way we thought they would. A couple of them didn't win their conference tournament, and but again, their fate had already been sealed for the most part, as we will see when we break these things down. So let's get right down into it here, and I want to just run right down the bracket and just kind of get your thoughts. And I'm going to break these down, of course, by regions. We're going to start in the East, and of course, no big surprise here. You had Duke and Siena. Number 1 against number 16, and they'll be playing the winner of Ohio State, which was the 8th seed, and number 9 TCU in the round of 32 over the weekend. Give me your thoughts on those couple of games and how you think. I will say this: if you look at this bracket, Duke may have gotten the toughest draw, even though they are the top seed, just from the fact that, I mean, they're in a bracket with a Rick Pitino coach team, a Bill Self coach team, Tom Izzo at Michigan State, Dan Hurley at UConn, Mick Cronin out at UCLA is a great coach. I mean, this was a Hall of Fame potential level of coaching that is going to be in the East Regional, and that's what your top seed has to face on their road to the Final Four.
Yeah, really was. It's something. I mean, was kind of glad Arkansas didn't get thrown into this one, to be honest with you, although John Calipari would have been a whole nother addition to that list. This region as a whole is stout. Duke is obviously the favorite. I will tell you, it feels like in this region, there are some teams that are getting hot at the right time. Ohio State, if you remember when we first started bracketology, they were like on my next 4 out. They're an 8 seed now. Bruce Thornton, a senior who's been there several years, has really got Ohio State rolling. They're a dangerous 8 seed when you got a guard like that. St. John's is red hot. Rick Pitino, he's chomping at the bit after bowing out as a 2 seed last year in the second round. He lost to John Calipari in Arkansas. So they're a dangerous 5 seed. Of course, Kansas, very enigmatic with Darren Peterson, but that's one of the best players in the country. You're always scared there. The 6-11 game, Louisville, South Florida. South Florida is an uber athletic team. They are red hot. They're not someone I'd want to face. You've got Izzo down there, and his pedigree speaks for itself. UCLA with Mick Cronin, you mentioned them. That's one of the hottest teams right now. In a tough Big Ten. A lot of people don't know this. If you count the conference tournament, they won 15 games in the Big Ten this year, and they're a 7 seed. And then, of course, UConn with Dan Hurley's won 2 of the last 3 national titles. This is a wildly competitive bracket. Duke, the obvious favorite, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you were to go down even to a 6 or 7 seed and tell me they came out of this one, I'm not going to be shocked. This bracket, you're right, it is stacked. Even the 12 seed Northern Iowa. That is a team with some historical tourney success. I could see a lot of interesting developments, a lot of madness from this bracket.
Yeah, that second round matchup between UConn and UCLA is a sneaky upset pick.
Yeah.
Easily.
And that's if UCLA can get by Central Florida, a team that
Right.
really kind of came out of nowhere this year. So, yeah, that is one I'll be looking at for sure.
And we'll talk about this more when we talk about Florida, but this was a weekend of crazies for coaches. And you know, I mean, I come from a line of, a coach does nothing to provide bulletin board material, but man, some of the stuff that came out of the SEC in particular, and of course, Hurley is famous for this kind of stuff. But anyway, let's just say UCLA will be a fan favorite most likely. And whoever plays UConn and maybe Florida from this point on. I mean, it's just those coaches kind of put themselves in the limelight.
They do. And how about this? Just something that immediately stands out to me right here. How about the potential in the Elite Eight for a 4th matchup between Connecticut and St. John's in the Elite Eight? That is curious to me. And I'll say this up front, this is not just about this region, but the whole bracket. Last year we had all 4 number 1s make it. The 4 1s are very stout again this year, but there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of talent, even getting down into the 5 and 6 seeds. I'm going to be really shocked if the 4 1s make it this year.
I could see that. I agree with that. Let's move down to the South region. Of course, we mentioned Florida. They are facing a to-be-determined opponent, which will come from the first 4 matchup being played on Wednesday night between 16 seeds, vying for that 16 seed, Lehigh and Prairie View. And then, of course, Florida coming off of a semifinal loss in the SEC tournament over the weekend. A little bit of a surprise, but then when you really look and see that was a home game for Vanderbilt, you're not really that surprised. Vanderbilt's a pretty good basketball team. I did think it was kind of interesting that if these teams continue to win, they'll see each other again in the Elite or the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that was crazy, isn't it? I mean, gosh, Vanderbilt just wiped the floor with Florida. And now they could meet in the 3rd round. That's kind of crazy.
I'll tell you that game gives me pause. I was all on Florida's bandwagon. Todd Golden just went crazy a little bit, for lack of a better term, with his comments after Kentucky. He tried to become Dan Hurley in the SEC, and it didn't go very well. And so, typically when that happens, man, I mean, you see what happened in the semifinals. That can be humbling pretty quick. But as far as it goes into the bracket, and you give me your opinion on this, man, if they do get, let's just say the seedings hold out and they do play Houston in the Elite Eight, or the Elite Eight, I mean, that's a home game for Houston. Houston won't have to leave their dorm rooms.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. And
in seating and placement by the committee.
When I was predicting this bracket, I had to look it up because, you're not allowed to play at a site where your school is the host. And that's what a lot of people don't know. Every one of these locations, a school is the quote unquote host. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, can Houston even be in the South region? Rice is the host, not Houston. So yes, they can. It's kind of quirky, kind of funny how that works out. But this region, yeah, you look at Houston, a very, very dangerous team. Illinois kind of tailed off a little bit towards the back end. Illinois is a very dangerous. They are maybe them and Arkansas and Alabama, maybe the most elite offensive teams in this tournament. It's curious that Illinois is playing Penn. I don't know if you saw what happened in the Ivy League yesterday. Penn upset Yale. Kid named TJ Power. What a name, right? TJ Powers has 44 points and 12 rebounds to lead Penn to the victory. Penn is coached by Fran McCaffrey, who until recently was the head coach of Iowa, who has plenty of experience playing Illinois. So an interesting matchup there. But I'll tell you, this is one of those Florida, Houston, Illinois, that Nebraska Vanderbilt. There are a lot of really, really good teams that could come out of this. Even the 8-9 matchup, Clemson and Iowa. Iowa's got a guy that can take over a game in Bennett Sturts. They could be scary in that 8-9. This to me is one. I mentioned that 3-14 with Illinois Penn. Nebraska Troy is maybe the most interesting 4-13 game to me. I could see Troy really kind of maybe wreaking a little havoc athletically with Nebraska. That'll be curious to see how that one goes. But this is a fun little bracket. Of course, you got the Aggies there, a potential for a second round old Southwest Conference matchup with Houston and Texas A&M if the Aggies can get by St. Mary's. So it's a curious bracket. There are some teams. This is a bracket. I think Florida's a Final Four team. I think Houston's a Final Four caliber team. I think Illinois is a Final Four caliber team. They're all right there.
Yeah, that Sweet 16 matchup potentially, Houston and Illinois will be interesting to watch. And I'm watching North Carolina, not necessarily because I think they're a top team by any means, but they are North Carolina, and this is traditionally their time of year. And they either traditionally or at least recently go either one of two ways. I mean, they're an early exit or they surprise you and make a deep run. And
yeah,
so that's kind of a mystery team for me in that bracket for sure.
Yep.
Swing back up to the top of the overall bracket here. Look at the West region where Arizona, of course, got the number 1 seed. Here's my shocker, probably of the top seeds for me, and because I just have not followed them that closely, or really the Big Ten. But Purdue getting a number 2 seed was a little bit shocking to me. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is one of those things where the Big Ten tournament ended about 30 minutes before the selection show. And so I needed to kind of send this to you early and didn't really get a lot of time to ponder it. Plus, I was just screaming at the local CBS affiliate for continuing to break in on weather when I'm trying to watch the Big Ten championship and the selection show. I'm like, there's only so many ways you can say take shelter. We get it. Anyway, I digress. But that number 2 spot was going to go to a Big Ten team. The question was it going to be Michigan State or Illinois early on? And then they both bow out early in the Big Ten tournament. And so Purdue, when Purdue got a win over, it was Nebraska. When Purdue got a win over Nebraska to move into the semifinals, you look and they're like, okay, Purdue is a pretty solid 3 right now. Well, then they beat UCLA and now they're in the finals against Michigan. If you're a solid 3 and you go and beat Michigan on a neutral court, there's a door where you can be the 2. And the fact that Michigan State and Illinois both bowed out early in the conference tournament, I think did pave the way. It was going to be one of those 3 teams. I don't know that it necessarily mattered, but no, I don't think a little bit of a surprise that it was Purdue, but not a shocker. They earned it by winning 4 games in 4 days against the competition they beat to get there.
Yeah. And again, I said at the top that, there wasn't a whole lot of movement and pretty much everything had been decided. That was an instance where they literally played themselves into a 2 seed.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying I agree. I didn't know if you wanted to break down the rest of that bracket or if
Yes,
you
go
had
ahead.
thoughts
Yeah,
on it.
absolutely. I was going to lead you into and point out your Hogs there. A little bit of controversy with their seating and placement here. What are your kind of overall thoughts on all of that?
I had them as a 4. A little bummed we're going to Portland when Oklahoma City was sitting out there. That would have been an ideal one. But Coach Cal immediately comes on social media, talks about how much he loves Portland and can't wait to get out there. So you know what, our coach is happy. He's embracing it, so I'm good with it. Um, uh, you know, I look at this region and arguably the 2 best point guards in the country are in this region, with Braden Smith of Purdue, who, by the way, in the 4 games in the Big Ten tournament had 46 assists in 4 games. And then Darius Acuff of Arkansas, who I think, only quote unquote had like 25 assists, but also averaged 30 points a game in the SEC tournament. So that'll be curious. But I will tell you right now, my son and I are watching this selection show on the March Madness app because we had to go that route. And Wisconsin showed up as a 5. And, Wisconsin's a team that's beat Illinois twice. They beat Michigan, nearly beat them again in the Big Ten tournament. I think they beat Purdue. I mean, they've been giant killers all year. And he and I looked at each other and we were like, uh-oh, is this, and sure enough, here we are, the 4. Of course, you got to get by Hawaii first. And Hawaii, watched them a little bit this weekend. They've got some strengths to that team, but that Arkansas Wisconsin matchup, I mean, that's the caliber of a matchup that could be like Elite 8, and it's in the second round. I look down here and I'm telling you, man, that this is, AJ Debansa and Darius Acuff in the same bracket is pretty crazy to me. It's wild. BYU will get potentially your Longhorns, who are in that first 4 matchup tomorrow night against North Carolina State. So we'll and a really intriguing potential second round matchup of BYU and Gonzaga. They used to be conference rivals in the West Coast Conference until BYU jumped to the Big 12. So a really intriguing potential matchup there. But yeah, this is, as far as talent goes, and of course Arizona, it goes without saying, if you didn't watch the Big 12 tournament, if you didn't see their semifinal game against Iowa State, which was absolute cinema, Iowa State hitting a 3 to tie it, Bradley, the Big 12 Player of the Year. I apologize, man. I said it should have been DeBance. I still kind of think it should have, but that dude showed out in the Big 12 tournament. This is a loaded region as far as individual talent goes. I'm telling you right now, I could see, I would say, no slam on Gonzaga, but the Arkansas Wisconsin winner, if it ends up being that, Wisconsin's got a tough one with High Point. High Point was in the tournament last year. They're a seasoned team. The Arkansas Wisconsin winner will be a challenge to Arizona if that matchup occurs. 1, because of Acuff for Arkansas, or 2, because Wisconsin's going to look at Arizona and say, so what? We beat Michigan, we beat Illinois, we beat all these teams. And then the potential for Debansa to make a run. Purdue scares me. I'm going to tell you right now, they're hot, and they've got 3 dudes who have been together for like 3 or 4 years that know each other. Purdue is to me the scary team in this region, even though Arizona is elite. It like I've told you, I don't think all 4 number 1s are going to make it. This is another stacked region.
Yeah, Mike, you did mention Texas and North Carolina State playing in one of the first 4 matchups on Tuesday night. Look, this is a rematch of a game played earlier in which Texas won out in Hawaii, Hawaii tournament early in the season. It was a very it was 3 or 4 point game, something like that.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest win at that point of the season for Texas, obviously. I don't have a whole lot of hope in this rematch, to be honest. The Horns just are not playing well, and there's almost like there's been a finality to this season for them here. It's just almost like they've run out of gas, and they got just about everything they could out of this club. So I'm gonna kind of poo-poo it here a little bit and say my Horns are not going to win that game. But if they do, I I for sure don't put a whole lot of stock in them being able to beat AJ DeBenson and BYU. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. I don't have the confidence that you have probably in Arkansas to make a run here for sure. But anyway, that's where they would land. And yeah, the whole Arkansas thing, and look, Cal handled it right as opposed to, you know, a couple of the other coaches we've already mentioned about handling things right. That just kind of shows his experience and leadership in these situations. And as much as a Hall of Fame coach, it can be underrated. I would say he's probably been a little bit underrated because of the high profile programs he's coached at. But what a job he's done at Arkansas, man. In just year two winning the SEC tournament. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel good. Very impressive run. They caught a little break by not having to play Florida, right?
No doubt.
But sometimes you have to get a little bit lucky to win those things.
And so, didn't have to play Alabama either because Ole Miss got hot. Chris Beard just
I was
scared the heck out of all bubble teams for a while there.
Yeah, we were both sweating that for a while with your Hogs, right? I mean, all of this, we'd be talking about something completely different if that game Saturday or Friday hadn't gone the way it had. So, or yeah, Saturday, right? It was a semifinal.
Yeah. It was
so anyway, good job there on the West bracket. Let's close it out here with the Midwest. Of course, Michigan, no surprise, as the number one seed, even though they did lose in their conference tournament final. That's probably, I don't know, that kind of has the feel to me of being one of those good losses for a team that you know, heading into the NCAAs, kind of regroup and refocus, and that's something you really don't want Michigan doing if you're an opponent. But they did grab, of course, the number one seed with their number two seed coming, Iowa State Cyclones in the Midwest there. Give us your thoughts on that overall bracket.
Yeah, Michigan, I agree with you on that because if you follow them in the Big Ten tournament, they nail-biter win over Ohio State, nail-biter win over Wisconsin, and it just felt like a loss was coming. And you'd much rather it happen there than later on. So I could see that. Iowa State, this was a team that there started to be some question marks about, I think. Late in the year, you know, at home, Texas Tech just whooped them on their home court. And that was after Texas Tech had lost Toppin. And Iowa State really found themselves a little bit in the Big 12 tournament. It started with an easier win, a game they should have won, but they played an Arizona State team and beat them in the largest margin of victory in Big 12 tournament history, 91-42. They then play Texas Tech in a rematch and fall behind, David, by like 15 points early and then come back to win that one by 20-something points. And then they play that epic game with Arizona that really could have gone either way. It just came down to a buzzer beater. But there is something, and I can't put my finger on it. You know how there are those teams, let's talk NFL. The Bills are going to find a way to kind of flame out, right? They're good, but they're going to find a way to it's just not going to happen. Iowa State, sometimes it's injury. Sometimes it's just the matchups doesn't work in their favor. They've had a lot of good teams that they don't make the Final Four. They just don't. And I'm not casting that in a light of what's wrong with them or whatever. I'm just saying it just never comes together for them. Is this the year? I don't know. I'm just telling you right now, if you're picking Iowa State to go to the Final Four, you're picking against history. Last year was only the second time in history 4 number ones have made the Final Four. So you were picking against history if you picked that. So I'm not saying don't pick them. I'm just saying for whatever reason, Iowa State has a bit of a struggle, but they're playing really well right now. The 3 seed is Virginia. Virginia was a late mover. At the last couple of days, I moved them up to a 3 just because I really studied their metrics. I thought they played a great game against Duke in the championship game, even though it didn't work out. So we'll see what happens to them. A couple things I want to talk about here. The 5-12 matchup is always ripe for upset, right? And not that we're going to get in the weeds with this, but I'm going to be honest with you. Vegas knows what they're doing when they set spreads. Vegas always knows what's going on. The two smallest favorites for 5 seeds are Wisconsin, who we just talked about in the last one. They are a 9.5-point favorite over High Point. And here in this region, Texas Tech is only a 7.5-point favorite over Akron. That pains me to say because, we have guns up in our family. My wife's a graduate of Texas Tech. Of course, I am thanking the Lord because every year it seems like we're due to meet up, Arkansas and Texas Tech in the bracket, and it can't happen this year until like the Final Four. So we'll all be happy if we meet up in the bracket this year. But Akron is a dangerous team. Akron is a very dangerous team. And so that 5-12 matchup, really, really interesting to me. The other thing I will say about this region is thank you, committee, for not setting a dangerous precedent by excluding Miami of Ohio from this tournament. I don't like that they're in the first 4. I don't like that they're having to play SMU in that game. I had them just out of that as a 10 seed. But hey, they got their shot, right? They got their shot. They can beat SMU on, I believe it's Wednesday night, and then they get to play Tennessee. But I do want to say thank you, committee, that we don't set a dangerous precedent by putting a team that lost 1 game all year, sending them packing to the NIT.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to mention that here. It's kind of, I really never paid attention to it. I don't know if this has been, the way we've done it in the past. It's kind of odd to me that you have 2 play-in games in 1 regional rather than having, 1 for each.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd to me why we would set that up that way. I would like an explanation from someone as to why the East doesn't have a play-in game. Because let's be honest, I mean, you've got 2 of these who are, of course, 16 seeds, and it is what it is. I mean, it'll be a 1 against the 16. But, these 11 seeds that, Tennessee, let's just, for instance, Tennessee is facing having to get ready for Howard or I'm sorry, for either SMU or Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
Those are teams that, I mean, let's just say, they're going to be competitive. And now you have to wait until, before you can really lock in and play those teams. Now, I do know that they get an extra day to do that. They're playing on Friday, but still, I mean, that seems a little bit unfair to me, to those 6 seeds to have to wait on those 11 seeds. I don't know why we don't have play-in games for them all to be 16 seeds, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But
yeah. And I would either be in favor of, if we're not going to expand, and we've already addressed that on this podcast in a previous episode, but I would be in favor of, and I don't even like the 16 seeds being play-in at all, because UMBC and Howard, the loser is not going to feel like they've been in the tournament. We've covered this. I would be in favor of making every play-in an 11, because at least at this point, all the 6 seeds are on an even keel. They're all
right.
waiting to see who they're going to play. So that would be helpful. Also, Texas and North Carolina State's going to feel like a tournament game. Prairie View A&M and Lehigh is not. So if you're not going to expand, let's make all of these 11 seeds a matchup of the last 8 to get in. But we're nitpicking here. But yeah, it is a little weird. And I don't even know how they decide who, in my mind, the 4 16 seeds that are having to play on Tuesday and Wednesday, those are apparently the last 4, the bottom 4, right? Wouldn't one of them be playing Duke, who's the top number 1? But no, Duke is already, we know, playing Siena. So Siena wasn't one of the worst 4. Why do they have to play Duke? None of it really makes sense to me. It's just kind of, it just, I don't know. It feels like they just do stuff willy-nilly just to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's confusing to me why that's set up. I can't come up with a reasonable explanation in my own head as to why they set it up that way, other than somebody somewhere, as they typically do, overthinks it. And for some reason, we've targeted an 11 seed as being a play-in game.
Yeah.
And, we've got two of them being played in the same region. What I don't understand is why the East doesn't have a play-in game.
Yeah.
And the
Why
Midwest
couldn't we
does
just
too.
put this? Why couldn't we have just put this UMBC Howard matchup
Yeah.
up there with
So if
Duke?
somebody out there has the answer to that, when we post this on our Facebook page, give us the answer. We'd love to know that because, we're a little bit stumped as to that. Good stuff there on the bracket. Again, everybody get your brackets filled out, all of that good stuff. We will have a special treat for you later this week as we go into Thursday's show. We're going to have a little bit of a special preview broadcast here. I'm gonna kind of just sit back and be the moderator in the room and let Matt and his oldest son Andrew, who follows it probably just as much as you, if not more, and he's got a little bit younger bent to it. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you guys kind of debate and talk about first round picks coming up to get you all set for the first round.
And I'll throw this caveat out there. He's coming in from school, so all this is contingent on he gets all his school stuff lined up and travel stuff lined up. But that is the plan right now, and looking forward to it because we definitely different takes on it, but definitely equally knowledgeable about it for sure.
Looking forward to that as well. And so we're just praying for safe travels for Andrew and that everything goes on schedule so we can get him here.
For sure.
That's the most important thing, right? We want to get him on the show.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to throw this graphic up, Matt, because I did spend Sunday night comparing your final back row bracketology with the actual NCAA bracket. And I want to give props again to my partner here because he was close. He was close on a lot of these. Rarely more, if ever, more than a seed off on these teams. So let's kind of go down the list here as I'm throwing it up. And I'm going to read this out, Matt. And we're going to go seed by seed here. But you got the top number ones all right. Duke, Michigan, Arizona, and Florida were your number ones on your bracket. You did miss on Purdue and Michigan State, which you explained how that happened. The rest of them you have nailed on your bracket with UConn, Iowa State, and Houston. Number 3 seeds, your back row, you had Illinois, Gonzaga, Purdue, Nebraska, the final one in the NCAA. Michigan State dropped to number 3. They had Virginia, which you had as a 4 seed. So, you missed that by 1, but Gonzaga and Illinois were right on the money.
But if you look at the actual bracket, when I filled out the bracket part, I believe in my bracket, Virginia was a 3. So it may have shifted off the S curve, but I'm looking at the bracket that I've got. Yeah, if you look at my Midwest bracket, I have Virginia as a 3 seed. A lot of this happened so quickly and there was so much, the S curve may not have, the brackets is what I predicted.
Yeah.
That is what
and
it was.
I did originally, so our listeners will know, I did originally consider putting these side by side and just and kind of going bracket by bracket, if you will. It was confusing to me looking at it when I got done with it, and I said there's got to be a better way to show this, and I'm not even sure this is the best way as far as the way I've got it. As we're recording this, Matt can't see what I'm looking at, so that's also kind of a disclaimer there. 4 seeds on the last back row bracketology, and I took these from your S curve. Let me also say that you had Vandy, Arkansas, Alabama, and Virginia. The actual NCAA bracket shows Kansas, Alabama, Arkansas, and Nebraska. 5 seeds, you had St. John's, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Wisconsin. And then the actual NCAA was St. John's, Texas Tech, Wisconsin, and Vandy. Again, just one off of any of those schools. 6 seed, back row had North Carolina, BYU, Louisville, and Tennessee. The actual bracket has Louisville, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. So again, 3 of the 4.
Not Wisconsin. Wisconsin was a 5 in the actual bracket.
Okay, who am I missing there on that one?
Now I hit all 4 of these. These were these for North Carolina, BYU, Louisville, and Tennessee were the 6.
There you go. Yeah, I retyped Wisconsin for some reason. Okay, so we got that one completely right on the 6 seeds, correct? Where we're at. Let's go to the 7 seeds. Back row has Kentucky, Miami of Florida, UCLA, and Utah State. The actual NCAA has UCLA, Kentucky, Miami, Florida, and St. Mary's.
So
okay,
one
you
off.
had St. Mary's at number 8, so you're one off.
Yeah.
But again, St. Mary's is not a household name, at least for me, and it's kind of odd to see them that high, but they were, of course, a 7 seed.
Yeah.
Back row, you had them as an 8 seed, so you were right on point there, along with Iowa, Villanova, and Clemson. The actual NCAA has Ohio State, Georgia, Villanova, and Clemson. 9 seeds, you had Ohio State, again, just one off there. TCU, St. Louis, and Georgia. The actual NCAA bracket has TCU, Utah State, St. Louis, and Iowa. So very close again on your 9 seeds. Again, as we go down this, you can just tell when you're able to look at it on your screen, just how close Matt was in his predictions on his S curve. Number 10, the 10 seed back row has Miami of Ohio, North Carolina State, Texas A&M, and UCF. On the actual NCAA bracket, he has UCF, Santa Clara, Missouri, and Texas A&M. You find out again he was pretty close because on back row he had Santa Clara and Missouri as 11 seeds. When actuality, of course, they are a 10 seed, so that's pretty close. Back row bracketology, he has Texas and SMU, and you look at that and you say, well, they didn't make that. No, they're actually playing in the first 4 to be able to be an 11 seed. So I'm giving you credit for that, brother. I'm just going to say that right now. You get credit for that. Actual NCAA includes South Florida and VCU, which you have as 12 seeds on your S curve. McNeese, Akron, South Florida, and VCU. The 12 seeds in the actual NCAA bracket: Northern Iowa, Akron, High Point, and McNeese. You nailed McNeese there for sure. The Southland champ knocked SFA out of the tournament.
Yeah, they did.
Connection there. In the 13 seeds, the 4 seeds in back row were Northern Iowa, High Point, Hofstra, and California Baptist. The actual NCAA has California Baptist, Hofstra, Hawaii, and Troy. When you break down to the back row bracketology of 14 seeds, you find Hawaii and Troy there. So again, you were just one off on those schools. Wright State and North Dakota State in back row. That fills out the actual NCAA bracket as they have North Dakota State and Wright State as 13 seeds, Kennesaw State and Penn, who Matt has as 15 seeds. And so again, just one off. Very close. I'm just telling you. And the S curve part of that probably has something to do with it. But anyway, Idaho, Penn, Kennesaw State, and Tennessee State are 15 seeds in the back row bracketology. The actual NCAA was Furman, Tennessee State, Queens, and Idaho. And then finally, the 16 seeds in back row on the S curve were Long Island, Queens, Furman, and Siena. Actual NCAA bracket was Siena and Long Island. And then you have the to be determines being, of course, Howard and UMBC, and Lehigh and Prairie View. So,
well, and one thing I want to talk about, and not that it's all that important because it's just fun, but this gets weird because if you look at the S curve, there's actually 17 seats, which we don't have a 17 seat.
I didn't know how to actually incorporate that into what I was doing, so that's why you were not seeing those on your screen.
Just to kind of clarify, if you look at the S curve, if you see all those 11 seeds right there that are on the 11 line, Santa Clara, Missouri, Texas, SMU, that was my projection as the last 4 in. So Texas and SMU were on there. Santa Clara and Missouri were actually up to 10s, excuse me, and North Carolina State and Miami of Ohio came down to that first 4. But since those 4 11 seeds actually only form 2 11 seeds because only 2 of them can win, when you go down from SMU, and remember, it's an S, it's a snake. So you see that it's VCU and South Florida are the next 2 teams on that 12 line. They're on the 12 line, but they're actually 11s because we need 2 more 11s. So I had them as 11s, which is what they were in the actual bracket, which means the last 2 on the 12 lines are 12s, but then you got to go down to the 13 line to get the next 2 12s. So that's kind of how it works. So if you go and look at the actual bracket part that I put in there, not the S curve, you'll see a lot of those numbers were actually probably dead on to what they were. It's just the S curve kind of throws it off for the way it is when you have to combine those teams in the play-in games.
And we got started with this whole thing with, of course, just give you all a little insight. Of course, Matt has been doing this for a while with his own bracketology, and we started doing that, introducing, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago.
About a month ago, yeah.
And so we got away from the Lunardi bracketology and started doing our own here with Matt. And so I just wanted to ask that question with everything that we have here. And again, we're looking at something completely different on our screen. How happy were you? How close were you in terms of how this has worked before for you, right? I mean, was this a good year? Was it a average year? In your
This was probably the best I've done, but I want to put a caveat on that because, like I said, it was pretty predictable. There wasn't a lot of when you got into the bubble, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit on my back page. There just wasn't a lot of debate. I've gone back and looked at it. I had one team that I was more than one seed off of, and that's Utah State. And I was debating St. Mary's as a 7, Utah State as an 8, or vice versa. I went with Utah State as a 7 because they won both their conference and their conference tournament in a tougher conference. And I went with St. Mary's as an 8. Well, St. Mary's ended up being a 7. Utah State was kind of surprised to me that they fell to a 9. I was a little surprised by that. So I had Utah State a 7. They were a 9. Every other one of the 67 teams, I was within 1 seed of what they were. Some of them, of course, exactly what they were. So, I felt pretty good about that. I'm looking at it just right off the top of my head, and I think I had, let's see, of the top 16 seeds, I had 13 of them seeded correctly. Of the 5 seeds, I had another, let's see, I had 3 out of 4 there. I had all the 6 seeds. So in the top 6 seeds in the tournament, like the top 24, all the 1 through 6 seeds, I think I hit 20 of the 24, exactly what they were seeded. So, I mean, hey, I'll take it. Like I said, I don't think it was as hard this year as it has been in the past, but still, I'll take it. I was pretty pleased.
I was impressed. I'll tell you, we know you're a pastor, but I also think you might be a little bit of a prophet. You got this pretty close, man. I'm just telling you. So a lot closer than I've ever been able to do it, for real. So, and again, with all of that being known, you're going to listen to Matt and Andrew's predictions, hopefully here coming up on Thursday morning. We're going to drop that. Hopefully, if everything works out, we're going to drop that podcast on Thursday morning. I know typically it's later in the day when you get your podcast, if you're subscribed, which you should, we hope, to the Right Team podcast. But anyway, we're going to drop that before the actual games begin on Thursday. So you'll have all of that good stuff to do for some last minute filling in of your brackets and changing and that kind of thing. So I can't wait for that to come up this Thursday. Okay. Again, we did mention at the top here, good stuff, Matt, on the men's side. Great job, buddy. Appreciate you doing all that work.
Yep.
On the women's bracket, again, we're not going, because of time, we're not going to really break that down. We're going to look at that a little bit more in detail tomorrow on tomorrow's podcast. So be sure to tune into that. Not a whole lot of surprises, I will say, at the top of that. Again, very top heavy on the women's side with UConn, UCLA, Texas, and South Carolina getting those top seeds. But they have their tournament set up a little bit differently than the men's. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. So make sure you download and check out the podcast tomorrow for that.